Hello and welcome to part 3 of Let's Study Half-Life 2. So I'm picking things up in an exposition scene, one that shows off Valve's usual approach to exposition scenes.
Lamar has gotten out of her crate again. If I didn't know better, I'd suspect Barney of trapping and, my goodness, Gordon Freeman. It really is you, isn't it?
That is, it's not a cinematically edited cutscene where the player gives up control of the view and just passively watches the events play out.
Trouble does tend to follow in his wake.
It's a scene where we're free to wander around, as NPCs deliver dialogue and walk around, hitting scripted marks on the map.
The final piece for our resurrected teleport.
I've always admired Valve's resolve throughout the Half-Life series, and Gearbox's too when they made the Opposing Force and Blue Shift expansions.
Well, is he here? There you are. Man, Gordon, you stirred up the hive.
But I'll fully admit that the results can sometimes be clunky.
Can't keep him here long, Doc. It'll jeopardize everything we've worked for.
The phases still look good, even by today's standards, but the bodies are wiry. This was before the age of motion capture, and also before Valve updated its suite of NPC staging tools. So, the animations are stiff and undynamic.
No, there's nothing to be nervous about.
And Gordon Freeman doesn't move at a pace that feels natural for these scenes at all. Everyone else is trying to have a conversation, and every time you try to move, it feels like you're sprinting across the room. In this scene, we're introduced to the character of Isaac Kleiner, who continues a trend that we've seen so far in Half-Life 2. The original Half-Life didn't really have characters outside of Gordon Freeman and the G-Man. The other friendly NPCs that populated the Black Mesa Research Facility weren't characters so much as generic character classes.
Damn it, get it off me!
There was the bald scientist, the black scientist, the stern scientist, the security guard. There could be multiple instances of this class wandering around on the same map at the same time. And over the course of the game, you're likely to see each of this character type die multiple times. Either in pre-scripted sequences,
For God's sake, open the silo doors! They're coming for us! It's our only way out! Oh my God, we're doomed!
or because you lead them into certain doom after conscripting them to act as your allies.
I certainly hope you know what you're doing.
In Half-Life 2, Valve decided to turn these anonymous and abstract types into genuine individual characters. So the generic security guard type becomes Barney,
Catch me later, I'll buy you a beer.
About that beer I owed you.
former Black Mesa Research Facility security guard and current undercover resistance member. Generic bold scientist type becomes Isaac Kleiner.
I suspected this could happen, but the administrator just would not listen.
We owe a great deal to Dr. Freeman, even if trouble does tend to follow in his wake.
Generic black scientist type becomes Eli Vance.
Please, get to the surface as soon as you can and let someone know we're stranded down here.
The last time I saw you, I sent you up for help after the resonance cascade.
And although we won't see him in this game, generic stern scientist type becomes Arne Magnuson.
We've assured the administrator that nothing will go wrong.
Freeman, you're not doing anything. Make yourself useful and find out what the hell is going on in there.
Anyway, Alex heads off to her father's lab, the so-called Black Mesa East.
Hey, Doc.
We're supposed to go too, but the teleporter that Kleiner has built malfunctions, and we end up just a few feet away. We're given a goal: reach Black Mesa East by traversing City 17's sewers and canals. That goal will provide the context for the action of the next several hours of the game, which I'll be condensing in this video. Anyway, we're out of Kleiner's lab, alone again. Barney throws us the first weapon of the game. It's the same first weapon Freeman collected in the original Half-Life, a crowbar that can be used for melee attacks. The moment that Barney throws you your crowbar and you set off into City 17's sewers marks the beginning of a very long stretch of Half-Life 2 that Gordon Freeman spends alone. There are two big stretches like this in Half-Life 2. First between Isaac Kleiner's lab and Black Mesa East, and then again between Black Mesa East and Nova Prospect. During both of these, we briefly interact with a small cast of characters,
Keep going, friend. That station was raided, but there's others up ahead.
clustered in various resistance outposts.
You're Freeman, aren't you? We got word you were coming.
But for the most part, we make our way forward alone, whether that's on foot, airboat, or dune buggy. The game can get a bit lonely during these stretches, and they're a missed opportunity. Whenever Gordon Freeman is alone, Valve doesn't get to show off their top-shelf voice talent, and the Source Engine's still impressive lip sync and facial animation. They definitely wanted to avoid this trap in episodes 1 and 2, which is why Alex Vance remains a near-constant companion in both of those. But you're alone for large stretches of Half-Life 2. In this regard, Half-Life 2 is similar to most linear first-person shooters of its era. Even still today, it's not uncommon for your player character to not encounter any friendly NPCs for large stretches of a single-player first-person shooter. And there are obvious technological and business reasons for this. Making friendly NPCs is a very resource-heavy endeavor. First, you'd have to take the time to create unique faces for your characters. Players are fine mowing down literally faceless enemies in first-person shooters. It conveniently dehumanizes them. Mask-wearing enemies are ubiquitous in first-person shooters, whether those are military-style face masks, KKK hoods, masquerade-style party masks, vaguely luchador-style masks, or vaguely luchador / ninja / hockey player. I don't know, you tell me what this aesthetic is supposed to be. I don't really get it. But players probably aren't as keen on having friendly characters wearing masks. Masks are kinda creepy. If a friendly NPC wears a mask, players are probably gonna guess that they're untrustworthy.
Atlas radioed on ahead. Says you were looking for an invite to the fisheries.
So, truly friendly NPCs mean resources spent on faces, and facial animations, and lip-syncing to dialogue.
Phew. It's quiet here. We can wait for the raid to finish.
This is intensive work, and it's cost-effective to skip it. Survey the history of 3D games, and you'll find a lot of friendly non-player characters that we only ever talk to on the radio.
Hello? Is someone out there? We have you on the security monitors, but no one knows who you are.
Or maybe we only ever talk to them through a windowless door.
KPD, I need to ask you some questions.
Do you know what's going on? My holo projection got cut off. I can't get a signal.
The building is under lockdown.
I'm sorry, I was supposed to give you a gift, but something went wrong. Can you help me?
Well, it depends. I don't really have much time.
Look, can you bring me a small metal pipe? Here.
I'll see what I can do.
Thanks, Mark. You're the best.
When I became infected by those mindless zombies, I split off from the others and secured myself here. I cannot leave. Nonetheless, you will need a hand. I will not. Bring me a saw.
By the time we reach them in the flesh, there's a good chance they'll have already died.
I'm afraid it's too late to save your friends.
The Polito form is dead, insect.
Or they'll be revealed as our enemy, which means they're a hostile NPC rather than a friendly one.
Well, this wasn't in your plans, was it, Doyle?
No, please, you don't understand.
Sometimes they'll have transformed into some sort of monstrosity.
Welcome to the mess hall.
Come for us! He's over here! Embrace me, glorious void! Embrace me!
This lets developers get away with giving them really dumb, monster-level AI, as opposed to smart, friendly character AI.
Yep!
If developers are willing to spend more resources, you go a few steps up. Friendly characters might converse with us, in scenes where they have a face and a moving mouth, but no body.
See you later!
Or they might have a motionless body with no jaw. Horror games give developers really creative ways out of needing to do lip sync. If developers do splurge on a fully animated body, it will often be limited to a non-interactive cutscene. Or if it's in a user-controlled part of the game, it will be enclosed behind a wall of unbreakable glass.
Julie, we made a business deal, you and I, did we not? Money changed hands. Let me read to you from the agreement.
Sorry, I can't greet you in person. It's safer for both of us, you understand?
Your fight for survival is admirable, but pointless.
And yet you keep on going.
In these cases, they've modeled the whole person and animated them. But at least the animation doesn't have to dynamically adapt to the player's movement in space.
Remit your mind with many locks and keys.
And you don't have to make friendly fire contingency plans for when players inevitably try discharging their weapons during dialogue, just to see what happens.
Right.
Anyway, back to Half-Life 2. In this section of the game, you are alone. You'll be alone many times throughout this game. Pacing of Half-Life 2 isn't perfect. People complain about the vehicle sections in particular as being far too long. I don't personally share that sentiment, but I understand where it comes from. The vehicle sections in Half-Life 2, alongside most of the foot chase business, are very lonely. Half-Life 2 doesn't have the stretches of friendly camaraderie that you get in some of, say, Halo's vehicle sections. I can understand if this sense of loneliness makes these traversal sections feel aimless and overlong for some. But for my part, I think that Valve deserves a lot of credit for sticking with their guns here, and not going the obvious route of adding a voice on the radio.
Would you kindly pick up that shortwave radio?
Hello? Are you there? Pick up the radio if you can hear this. I know you're there. I've been tracking you since you and Val arrived.
Who are you?
The voice on the radio is one of the most ubiquitous tropes of first-person shooters. And of video games as a whole, really.
Hello? That base must have some kind of ventilation system to recirculate the air.
The voice on the radio is a convenient way to add a character to the story, while foregoing much or all of the work of animating them.
My name is Rebecca Lansing, and I'm a counter-terrorism consultant to Trioptimum.
I'm Atlas, and I aim to keep you alive.
I'm the guy who's going to tell you how to survive. Call me Doyle.
I'm Dr. Samuel Hayden. I'm the head of this facility.
My code name is January.
My friends call me the Prepper.
Hi, Simon. I'm Catherine. Have you figured out what's going on yet?
Me? I was hoping you'd have some answers.
I probably have some. What do you want to know?
It's also a developer's go-to tool for any and all exposition needs. Need to explain what this place is, and why the player is stuck there? Voice on the radio, reporting for duty.
We're tracking a disruption on Citadel Station, something involving an onboard AI called Showdown.
Need to tell the player what they need to do next, and why they need to do it? Voice on the radio, to the rescue.
You need to get out of there and quickly.
The entire sector is depressurizing and the blue vacuum shield won't last long.
Head toward Alpha Lab.
You must go immediately to the Hargreave Rash building. Use the elevator to change floors.
You should be able to see the old World War II fort on the hill now.
I need you to go there and shut down the starboard defense system.
Go ahead, voice on the radio. Open a ticket. Tell us what thing we need to fix.
Figure out how that power gate opens. I'm gonna need to do some hacking. Unfortunately, the local comm tower is down.
Listen good.
Can you help?
You need to find Vulcan and Prometheus stations and override the lockdown from each facility.
If you attach the SOS beacon to it, you can launch it away from the ship to make a clean broadcast.
You can channel that magma flow using the redirect valve.
Make your way to the satellite room and manually establish a link from there.
I need you to find the server hub and reset it so I can get into the system.
The comms array receiver isn't responding. Isaac, can you get back to the bridge?
If you activate the marketplace comm tower, I'll have the security system to get you inside.
Or what thing we need to destroy.
Destroy the antenna inside the dish.
Get up there and destroy the communication center.
Delta System computers are showing all off-base communication down.
Biker gang destroyed the primary comm
We can't
tower.
talk to it until the comms array is
You want to
fixed.
go upstairs to the comm
You
center.
need to disrupt their communication by destroying the satellite.
You must retract that transmission dish.
One more comm tower inside Roho House.
Ah, thanks, Doom Guy. Finally, some peace and quiet. The voice on the radio is something added by a writer at a late stage in the game's production, after the developers have already decided on the string of set pieces they want. It has a function to provide necessary exposition and context for the actions we're supposed to take in the game. It does its job, but it's awkward.
I'm setting up a command post here. I can monitor status reports of the entire base from Delta Central Authority and communicate with other Marine teams.
That radio has a bioreader.
They're hooked into CCTV cameras all over London.
We can get the primary tower working. I can find out what's happening in the rest of the city.
The voice on the radio posits that somewhere in this world, someone's watching your character, monitoring your actions so closely that they're basically omniscient.
Over here. I've got eyes on you.
From the sounds of that you invent, I'm guessing you're the proud papa of a brand new Lazarus Vector.
But the flip side to their omniscience is that they're holed up, hiding. They refuse to come out into the open and do things themselves.
Morgan, I won't be joining you.
Everything from the tightening of a bolt to the blowing up of a nuclear power plant needs to be done by your character. They are the eyes, the ears, and the brain. We are merely the hands.
I'm not exactly flexible at the moment.
I'll take us there. I can move, jump, swim, sort of. You're stuck in the door opener, the Omni tool. I'll just carry you there and you'll show me what to do.
Theoretically, the voice on the radio is supposed to emphasize the importance of what the player is doing. But too often it does the opposite. It makes us feel like we're being assigned busy work. We're just a handyman.
A service technician has been notified.
Pressing the buttons that our more important bosses can't be bothered to press. We're an errand runner. Sometimes literally.
There is a delivery pickup available near your current position. Thank you. We're using the automated 8-package service. Delivery destination now available.
Half-Life 2 even makes fun of this, when we're asked to operate the teleporter at Isaac Kleiner's lab.
You gonna let Gordon throw the switch?
Gordon, go right ahead. Very good. Good job, Gordon. Throwing that switch and all. I can see your MIT education really pays for itself.
The joke here is also a lesson, illustrating what not to do in game design. Don't have an in-game character explicitly assign the player a simple task, like pressing a button. It robs them of a feeling of agency.
The machinery in these canyons are Halo's primary firing mechanisms. They consist of 3 phase pulse generators that amplify Halo's signal.
And for God's sake, don't try to hide how simple the task is through gratuitous technobabble. You just end up making yourself look worse.
If we damage or destroy these generators, the monitor will need to repair them before Halo can be used.
This is especially bad when tasks are nested into other tasks. Here, the technobabble tends to become really overcomplicated and pedantic.
We need to interrupt the pulse generator's energy stream. I've adjusted your shield system so that it will deliver an EMP burst to disrupt the generator.
To explain how this particular subtask is different from previous subtasks.
Riots at the core to self-destruct. This is different than what you did.
Now, let's look at what Valve does. In the absence of a voice on the radio. So this is just a simple Valve puzzle. It's Valve's namesake. It's old-fashioned, directly tied to the old water physics puzzles that they were happy to show off in the first Half-Life. It's in no way revolutionary, but it's handled so gracefully. The player is just barreling forward, the only way forward. And lo and behold, there's an obstacle. And they have to find some way to get beyond it. That's it. That's the entire setup. There's no one blabbering to them on the radio, telling them how important it is that they fix these pipes so that they can restore water to a resistance camp or whatever. We solve this problem not because we're told to, but because it's there. It's in our way. And even when Valve does use voices on radios, it's in a completely different way than the traditional voice on the radio. Take, for instance, Station 12 in the sewers. There's a voice here calling out to us. It's not a voice in our head, it's a voice in the space itself.
Station 12, come in. Station 12, do you read?
Our curiosity is piqued, we might wander toward it.
Station 12, come in. Station 12.
This is Station 8. We heard 12 go down and out. Surgical strike units are targeting railway stations. Repeat, civil protection is coming down on underground stations.
And the same thing happens at Station 7 as well, later on in the canals. Again, a voice that's not in a radio that's attached to us. The radio is in the space of the game, it's an environmental feature. It's something that's out there calling us to be exploratory.
Station 12, come in. Station 12, do you read?
One way to describe the difference between how Valve motivates the action in their games, as opposed to how many other developers do it, would be to differentiate between pushing the player versus pulling the player. I'm borrowing some buzzwords from the field of education here, just to briefly sketch out this dichotomy. Push-based educational styles are guided by the teacher. The teacher asserts their authority to decide what's important and constructs a curriculum around these decisions. The curriculum is then pushed onto students via content and assignments, which all arrive with the implicit assertion, you need to know this stuff. Pull-based educational styles are guided by the student. This is hard to enact in a traditional classroom, but it's a frequent goal of things like e-learning and career retraining. Whether you're developing educational games for adolescents or module-based adult-oriented career development courses, you have a common goal. You want the student to be able to latch on to what interests them the most, to follow what they're passionate about, or captivated by, or simply find fun. This is pull learning. Now, I don't intend to defend the track record of educational games, but I think this philosophy of pulling is useful. It's something that a lot of story-driven single-player games still struggle with to this day. As players, we're constantly being assigned stuff to do by a voice on the radio. Arrows tell us where to go. Waypoint markers mark our next goal. Counting down meter by meter. We're constantly being hounded to hurry up.
You gotta speed it up, man.
And being berated when we fail.
All we had to do was follow the damn train, CJ.
That's why Valve's work back in 2004 still stands as such a shining beacon. To go back to Station 7, I can think of a lot of games where, as the player approaches the station, a voice on the radio might come on. And it might say something like,
I'm getting radio silence from Station 7. Would you kindly use your EMP to reroute the phlebotinum injection manifold into their comms array?
Then the player would feel like they've just been assigned to go explore this station. But Valve doesn't assign their player tasks in this way. Any motivation to explore isn't imparted to the player character by the game's other characters. It's just left up to the player themselves, either their sense of curiosity or their need for supplies if they're running low, that sort of thing. Station 7 is an optional little side area, but Valve employs this pull strategy consistently, even in the non-optional areas of the game. So for instance, at a certain point, the player's way is blocked by a canal lock closing. In another game, you might get a voice on the radio here.
Looks like the canal has been closed. According to the plans I'm seeing here, there should be a way to open that canal lock inside the building to your right.
But there isn't any. There's just silence and an environment around us. And so we look around. Might as well dock at this little docking area. Then we might as well go inside and... oh, what's this? There's enemies in here. Oh, but there's a cool new gun, too. The Magnum. Sweet. Guess I might as well keep going. Gotta go between these crates. hide from the helicopter. Man, that thing's annoying. And shoot a bunch of more guys. Oh, and look at this, I can... yeah, if I just... Problem solved. Every single step of this journey feels like a discovery. It feels like we as players didn't know what to do, so we just explored and stumbled upon solutions. This is pure pool. We never get assigned any tasks. We just discover what we need to do on our own. We don't get confused and lost because the solution to our problems are simple, overall. We might even happen upon a solution without even fully realizing the problem. But it's okay that the solutions are simple because the game isn't being patronizing. It's not explicitly assigning us menial labor and then patting us on the back when we do that labor.
I'm in. You are awesome.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
Half-Life 2 is full of puzzles. But almost none of these are announced as a puzzle. Arbitrarily assigned to us by some character as busy work. Our way forward just happens to be blocked. And since we want to keep going forward, we poke around. And we find that by manipulating physics objects in the environment, we can find a way around the blockage. In a very straightforward cause and effect way. These puzzles are all incredibly simple, but because they follow basic physical logic, they make us feel like we've applied some actual intelligence. Pooling the players in this way is tough to pull off. Even really good games stumble upon it. For instance, I really liked Arcane's 2017 Prey game. It's a big and expansive first-person shooter, falling much more in the exploratory and open-ended lineage of System Shock than with the strict linear rails approach of Half-Life. At a certain point several hours in, the map really opened up, and excited by the freedom afforded to me, I decided to follow up on a side objective called The Corpse Vanishes that had been hanging around in my to-do list for some time. It required me to go to the Psychotronics lab, which had just opened up to me, so I decided to follow my own curiosity and take a break from the main story missions for a beat. And this is what happened.
Hello, Morgan. It's time we spoke.
I'm going to pause right here to point out that I did not bring this map up at the moment and interrupt December's radio call. The game did this all by itself. It interrupted its own exposition by forcing me to look at a map at that particular moment. Anyway, moving on.
Your name is December. My purpose is to help you escape Talos 1. I know your memory's shot full of holes, but you left instructions at the Typhon shipwreck containment. Alex has a private escape pod. You made a copy of his launch key and hid it in the Neuromod division, along with the supply cache. I'll transmit the location to your map. I'll contact you again when you have the key.
Then open the gates of hell and lock us in. Transtar's going to need an army of lawyers.
You're heading to Psychotronics? That's... Wait. Okay, I see. Did you already know about the main lift? It's malfunctioning. I'm not sure why, but the car is stuck at the top. There's another route through the Psychotronics lab. Morgan, that lab is where the Typhon broke containment.
That is such an atrocious pileup of voice on the radio exposition, interrupting my attempts to explore on my own, and genuinely interfering with my efforts to stealth my way around that monster. Arcane had already successfully pulled me into exploring their world, but then all of a sudden the soundtrack and the UI got cluttered with multiple strands of pushing. So trust me when I say that even masterful developers stumble when it comes to leveraging curiosity rather than rotely assigning tasks. Alright, there's a topic I want to get into right now, but I think I'm about to die. So just give me a moment to catch my breath and... Okay, everything's good. I got a good rest, I'm not dying anymore. One of the key ingredients that makes Valve's pool strategy possible is the fact that the game uses health packs, rather than regenerating health. Regenerating health became really popular in the years following Half-Life's 2 release, and there are reasons for this. In the wake of Halo, first-person shooters were finally becoming a major genre on consoles. Call of Duty sold absolutely obscene numbers on the Xbox 360 and PS3. And if you're sitting on your couch and just want to be immersed in some spectacle, rather than sitting on a desk ready for some Twitch precision aiming, regenerating health is a nice feature. It streamlines things. It's completely forgiving of small mistakes, only really punishing huge mistakes. But it has the side effect of shaping player behavior in really distinct ways. For an example, take a look at some footage of me playing Resistance 3, which released on the PS3 in 2011. Insomniac Games, the developers of the Resistance franchise, had experimented with different player health mechanics over the course of its 3 mainline entries. In the third game, they decided to go the pure, old-school health packs route. But in this footage, I'm playing the game in the mindset foisted upon me by the norm of regenerating health in console FPSs. This means I'm playing very cautiously. I'm favoring sniper-type weapons. I have the high ground, and I'm refusing to concede it. Even as a friendly NPC invites me to jump down to join him, I'm sticking to the cover that I have. And in a game with regenerating health, this would have worked. Nothing could have flushed me out of this relatively safe position. But because this is a game with health packs, my health is slowly being sapped away this entire time. No matter how much luck I have on my side, I can't completely avoid getting hit when I step into the open. And so my health bar, very slowly, is dwindling to nothing. I'm behaving this way because that's how regenerating health encourages people to play. But Resistance 3 isn't a game with regenerating health. It's meant to be played in a different way. It's designed to encourage players to be bold. The correct way to play this sequence is to take the zipline down, so that you're right there in the enemy's faces. Blow them away at close range, and you find that they drop health kits, which you can then pick up. The health kits are like little carrots, beckoning me out of safety, forcing me to be bold, altering the risk-reward equation. They're there to make sure that, even when you have a sniper rifle, sometimes you'll still need to emerge from your foxhole and run to another bit of cover, hoping to find a health pack along the way. They're there to even promote outright recklessness, to get you to run toward an approaching enemy rather than backwards, because you see that one you just killed dropped a health kit. The glory kill mechanic in the 2016 Doom game is really the apex of this design strategy. Before it came out, people were worried that id's current focus on consoles might lead them to incorporate things like regenerating health. But instead, they went with a system that rewards you for recklessly rushing at oncoming demons, to reap the health rewards that close-up kills give you. Anyway, that's how health kits affect player movement in combat. But they do more than that. They also encourage player exploration. James Paul G., an educational theorist who has studied games a bunch, looking for lessons on how they motivate players, includes a really wonderful passage in one of his books where he describes, in second person, the experience of a certain moment in American McGee's Alice, and I'm just going to read that. At one point in American McGee's Alice, you, playing as Alice, are lost among rocks and wild streams. However, you can see far off at the top of a mountain a bit of a mansion. Furthermore, the environment contains some contours of rocks and hills that suggests ways up. And finally, shining on a few rocks ahead of you are red jewels that you have already learned give you more health if you pick them up. Their placement clearly suggests moving toward them. The whole layout of the environment, then, helps you guess intelligently about how to proceed. This passage really gets to the heart of the negative effect regenerating health has on level design. You need your players to need something. If they don't need anything, then they don't have any motivation to go anywhere. You take away their basic drive to ask, what's over there? And you end up replacing that sense of curiosity, that direction through a space motivated by reward, with a bunch of dictatorial commands. And I guess that works in military shooters like Call of Duty, because realistically you'd always be following the direction of your commanding officer anyway.
Bridge truck, hold here till my signal. Frost, with me. Roger.
But it also leads to the ugly excesses of voices on the radio. In Half-Life 2, Valve trains players early on that a specific type of crate, ones that look like this, will have useful items in them. There's actually a bunch of interesting things going on under the hood with how these crates function, including the fact that their contents actually change based on where the player's health is and what their shield energy is and what weapons they've been using recently and so on and so forth. But the point I want to make is really simple. They're the carrot that's dangled in front of us. Or rather, they're an array of carrots forming a breadcrumb trail. A carrot breadcrumb trail. Crumbs of carrot cake? Whatever, this analogy is getting too belabored. But the basic point is there's something that the player wants and needs, and they allow Valve to pull players toward the relevant corners of the levels, rather than push them. The motivation we have for moving toward a health pack is our own. It's not something that's hoisted upon us by a chattering NPC. One final thought before I end this video. At the time it came out, Half-Life was widely regarded as a revolution in game storytelling, which is a bit counterintuitive when you really get down to it, because Half-Life doesn't tell that much of a story. We can go through its basic beats right here. Young theoretical physics postdoc Gordon Freeman is at the scene when an experimental scientific procedure goes awry. Said procedure opens up a dimensional rift, allowing aliens from another dimension to teleport into the vast facility where he works. Initial hopes are pinned on a military rescue, but it's then revealed that the military has arrived to silence the scientists by killing all witnesses, rather than save them. As he struggles to survive a multi-front conflict, our protagonist discovers that this is not humanity's first encounter with these aliens. In other parts of the lab he didn't have clearance to, separate teams had been abducting these creatures from their home and performing experiments on them. Finally, Freeman reaches the Lambda Complex, which characters had previously told him might hold the answers. He discovers that the lab had long been doing experiments in teleportation, which landed them in the border dimension of Zen. It was these experiments that provided the initial contact between humans and the aliens. In order to close the dimensional rift, Freeman must travel over to Zen and defeat the alien who is commanding the forces of the alien dimension. He does so. Upon success, he is offered a job by the mysterious transdimensional authority known as the G-Man. That's definitely a story. It's not a particularly revolutionary one. It borrows a lot from the output of id Software at the time. Both Doom and Quake were about monsters invading in the wake of scientific experimentation with teleportation technology. In terms of complexity of themes and character development and overall emotional palette, it really can't hold a candle to what RPGs were doing around the same time, in both Japan and in the West. So it's important to make a distinction. I don't think that people really laud the Half-Life franchise for its story. I mean, its story is fine. It's not bad or anything. But I think that people mostly laud it for its storytelling. And that's because Valve's storytelling is, like everything else in these games, based around the philosophy of pooling players. Sure, there are dialogue scenes, and we can't skip those, so I suppose that's a demerit on Valve's part. But aside from those, player engagement with the story of these games is entirely guided by player curiosity. It is entirely possible to run through these levels without caring one whit about the story that's embedded within them. But if you are interested, there are all sorts of details to notice. The best examples of these are the various appearances of the G-Man along the edges of the various levels, always keeping an eye on Freeman's progress. It's completely ignorable. But if you're interested, it's there. Another little carrot cake crumb trail for you to follow. Wow, now I'm weirdly attached to that analogy. I'll be going into more detail about Valve's approach to storytelling in the next video. That's all for this one. Thanks for watching.